Feeling inspired by hosts Ron and Tyler? This episode of the MovieBuffs podcast is brought to you by the YouTube workout channel Time to Train Fitness. With all things YouTube, it's free. Jump into a bar class, crank out a cycling workout, or pump out a strength session. Everything you need to work out for free at home. Check out the description and subscribe today.
A quick promo break here in this episode. If you've been a fan of our podcast, you've probably already heard me, Tyler, one of your hosts, talk about the Naboso insoles. If you are ever wondering about, what are insoles? How do they help my feet? Are they really useful? I got to tell you that I've been wearing these Duo insoles for probably a year and a half now, and I think they're game changers. If you sit at a desk, if you are on your feet, so basically anybody, for anybody in the world, they can really help with your health. If you ever have foot pain or if you have any type of issues with your feet, these can be a game changer for you. Hopefully you take my word on it. You head to the link in the description, you buy yourself a pair, and you come back and you share it that, I actually bought those insoles and they actually do work. You know, that'd be something that we'd love to hear, love to see, because that means that you're working on your health. That's it for the promo break. Let's get back to the episode and keep hearing about all the random things that Ron has to say. Welcome in on another instant reaction episode in the MovieBuffs podcast. My name is Tyler, and in this movie, I'm going to be talking generally about next goal wins. And I have to say it that way because, and this is how I'm going to kick off this episode by stating that these episodes are spoiler-free. They are intended to promote going to the movies, promote movies that we think people would enjoy. If they were movies that we didn't think people would enjoy, we wouldn't record any content. To be honest, Ron and I, we are working professionals. Recording content about movies is a hobby, and we do it when we can. That's why sometimes we get a few episodes out, 1, 2. Sometimes there are none coming out because we're working professionals. And again, like I said, this is a hobby. It's for fun. And I say that because recently we got a comment on the YouTube channel about somebody upset that I wasn't giving an objective analysis of the Marvels. And again, it was an instant reaction episode, spoiler free, just talking generally about the movie. And to be honest, I don't get why that movie has been receiving so much criticism, but I am putting this out there early in this episode that, again, this is spoiler free. I'm not going to be going in depth on it. I'm just going to be talking about reasons why it might be fun to watch, some of the really emotional parts of it that people will enjoy, and hopefully, again, get people to go to movies. That's one of the big things that has declined. And I mean, that was a big part of Oppenheimer over this year. Big conversation is that Christopher Nolan was getting people to go to the movies, something that has been struggling ever since the pandemic, and getting people back to the theaters, especially with the battle. I don't want to call it a negative way of battle with streaming services, but getting people to go see the movie, spend money at the movies is a positive thing. And that's really why we create these instant reaction episodes. Now, getting into this one, it's been a busy month for me in terms of going to the movies. So that's a positive, I'll say. At the moment, I've seen 4 movies in theater. I've seen Miss Marvels, I saw The Holdovers, I saw the new Hunger Games, and I've saw Next Goal Wins. And I will say that going into this one, I was actually pretty tired. I was tired. It was a midday movie and on a Saturday, and I was tired. But I drank a Red Bull and I sat back, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed this movie. And so I bring that up because this is the 4th movie I've seen, 4th time at the theater. Can get tiresome, but got my money's worth with my AMC pass. And I'm going to be talking about this movie that potentially you've seen 1 or 2 commercials about, wondered what it's about. It's really been marketed kind of about the director, Taika. And for good reason. He's become a pretty popular director, a pretty popular individual within Hollywood, and for good reason. I think he makes good content, movies that people want to see. And before we get to the main meat and potatoes of this episode, I do want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to pop on an episode of the MovieBuffs podcast. Ron and I thoroughly enjoy making content whenever we can, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen with us. If you ever miss any part of this episode, you can always pick it up on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you smash that subscribe button, as that is one of the platforms that we are trying to grow. We can always catch us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well. Little movie background with Next Goal Wins. The director, like I mentioned, is Taika Waititi. He is known for Thor Ragnarok. I feel like that's kind of one of the big properties that really started to exponentially increase his stock within Hollywood. He did Thor, Love and Thunder as well. He's done Jojo Rabbit. What I like from him is content with What We Do in the Shadows property. It's kind of tailed off, but if you've seen the movie with the same property, within the same realm, it's pretty funny as well. And sometimes he appears in it, and sometimes he directs it, sometimes he writes an episode. But that was one of my favorite things that he's done. This cast includes Michael Fassbender. He's Thomas Rongen. There's also Oscar Knightley, Tavita, Kamiya Kaimana. There we go. I apologize, as we always joke in the podcast that I'm not the best at pronouncing names, and oftentimes I spend time before an episode on Google going through pronunciations. This individual plays Jaya. There's David Fain, who plays Ace. Let me read to you now the IMDb summary. So it's the story of the American Samoa soccer team who suffered the worst loss in World Cup history, losing to Australia 31-0 in 2001. With the 2014 World Cup approaching, the team recruits a down-on-his-luck Maverick coach, Fassbender, to help turn their fate around. Now, the way that I'm going to start this episode off is actually talking about and kind of comparing it to the other movie that I saw that same weekend, which was The Hunger Games. And one of the big issues I had with that movie was they didn't engage the audience. They didn't get them invested in characters, in storylines. And when I thought about this overnight and the next day, and after I saw Next Goal Wins, it's almost, I wouldn't say I was being hypocritical, but this story doesn't do those things. It tells the story early or get the characters invested, but yet the viewer will stay engaged the whole time because, in my opinion, it's quality writing, a quality director, and it's probably the topic too. The Hunger Games, I honestly never felt like I was invested in any character. Anything that bad happened, anything that was going on, you're kind of wondering, okay, does that relate to the future character? Okay, he doesn't like this person, but who cares? Because they didn't get you invested. You're not invested in the character and what their outcome is. And a good example I could give of this is with the Jaya character, this transgender athlete. You meet them very early on, and I noticed them early on in the movie in one of the opening sequences, and was wondering, I was thinking in my head, is that a transgender athlete? Okay, hopefully they talk more about her and what her story is, and when they actually do get to it, it becomes a pretty prominent part of the story, which I found very fascinating. And they intertwine it with Fassbender's character, the coach, and I don't want to give away how their story arc develops and what goes on, but I thought it was a very fascinating and fun part of the movie. And with a good director, they can also bring in a good production team, i.e. the composer for this film, Michael Giacchino, who is known for a lot of big movies, a big composer doing a smallish movie like this. And the music, how it goes with the whole movie, how it's told, it's an element of the movie that can really get an audience engaged. On the other hand, I'm going to again bring in a negative element of the Hunger Games movie that I saw. It was dramatic for no reason at certain points. And this isn't really giving anything away for it, but there's a scene where the windows open in the arena, and it honestly is being treated like the most dramatic sequence in the movie, and it's just windows opening, not joking. It's just like it's like you're just opening the windows in this fake arena, the CGI arena. Not too intense, but with keeping the viewer engaged. The storyline of the main character, Michael Fassbender's character, isn't really revealed until the end of the movie. But yet, you know that he's struggling. You know that there's something wrong with him. You know that there's a part of him that is preventing him from wanting to fully connect. And I like those themes. I will talk about this more later on in it, but the themes within the movie with understanding another country, another culture, another religion, another outlook on life. That is something that he struggles with because of his viewpoints on how sport should be played. And I think that's a pretty important message. My wife and I always talk about, oh, are you going to coach our kids in the future? Because I do have a sports background. That is part of my education as well, sport performance. And I always say no, because I don't want to deal with parents, to be honest. That is one of the big reasons why I don't want to. I don't have any passion to. I see friends of mine that do help out or do coach high school. I have a good friend that sometimes listens to the podcast that he is a high school baseball coach. And I've seen just from sitting in the stands how parents talk about him, the way he's coaching, despite him being a very solid coach. The parents, of course, have their own opinion when they're in the stands, and they don't want to take responsibility for the actions of their kids or how little effort they put into it at the end of the day. And so with a viewpoint, understanding where people are coming from, those are things that I feel as a society today, you see a lot of it. Oh, back in my day, this would never happen. Oh, back in my day, well, when I played, oh, these players are so soft. People, generations, they change. And the way that you educate, the way that you teach your audience or your athletes and you connect with them, those all have to adapt with time. And it's one of the I'll say one of the more fascinating pieces that I remember when I was about to lecture at a conference in the last, I'll say 5 years, I believe it was. I had to take a course on, Gen Z and how they learn and what are the best practices for connecting with them, because taking that mentality, oh, this is the way that I learned it, and therefore you have to do it this way. It doesn't work with other generations. You have to be able to connect with them. If you are a fan of professional football, NFL, they talk about players, coaches, and their ability to connect with the players. If you're just going to sit back and, oh, you are so soft or you can't do this, it's not going to work. And in this movie, Fassbender's character goes through one of those story arcs where he came from his own viewpoint. Of course, it's a little exaggerated. There's more behind it of why he's a little bit of a D-bag. And that plays out throughout the movie. And it also allows you a way to learn more about American Samoa and their culture, their outlook on life. And I think that that's actually where I'm going to transition to right here. Another promo break for you here. If you are a fan of the podcast, you know at the beginning of each episode, there is a promotion for Time to Train Fitness on YouTube that does online workouts that are free, 100% free on YouTube. What was just added was a 12-day workout series. So if you have dumbbells, if you have an indoor bike, you can follow this for 1 month to help you get back on track and work on your fitness. Check it out at the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe and make sure that you keep listening to the MovieBuffs podcast. With the culture of American Samoa, I found it very fascinating. I will put it out there that I do know that Maori culture and religion and American Samoa, I know that's not all Maori. I know that there's different pieces. I believe when I was doing some research, there is some Christianity, but and this is one of my, I'll say, I know I would cry if this happened, and I'm more than okay to admit this on the podcast. If I ever had a haka happen for me, oh man, I think they're just what's going on in the culture behind it and the reasons of why they do perform them. It just is something that hits me in every single time, right in the heart and the emotional feeling department. But learning about American Samoa and the culture, and one of those pieces that I found very enjoyable was them talking about happiness. Different characters talk about happiness and how that's an important part of their culture. And one of the characters in the movie even talks about, okay, if you do want to leave, and he's talking to the coach, if you do want to leave, that'd be fine. I just hope that you're happy. And that over positivity, I think, really resonates with me, because in my perspective and how I manage and work with people in my professional, with my businesses, it comes from more, how do I motivate them in a positive way? I've worked for bosses, companies where it's about negativity, it's about fear. and some of it being illegal in the way that they harass individuals. And with happiness and motivating people, I think our culture has been told that, oh no, you have to be a mean manager. You have to intimidate your employees in order to get the best out of them. But in my opinion, that's the quote unquote easy way to do it, because it's easy to be mean. But how can you learn about somebody to motivate them in a positive way, in a positive manner, and wish happiness upon them and hopefully get the best out of them in that capacity? It takes some more work, in my opinion. I think that's the honesty of it, is it takes more work in order to create that type of happy environment, happy work environment, happy life. And you've seen some businesses, you hear about these things these days with different cultures. And I think it's pretty fascinating in that manner, that this is their culture, that they believe in happiness. They want the best of people. They want for people to have a happy day, happy life. And they always wish that. With the Jaya character, again, coming back to her storyline, and I know I'm most likely going to be mispronouncing this, and the main character, he does mispronounce it, and it goes through him trying to pronounce it correctly. Her being Fani, and the way that it was described, because the main character, Fassbender's character, Thomas, he's questioning, he's wondering about Jaya and why she's like this, and what is her story, all these different things. And the way that it's described is she's one of us, but different. Of course, they want the best for this individual. Again, it ties in a little bit there with the happiness element of it. But those pieces right there, I didn't know about them. I find them fascinating. And I think that whole storyline within it, with Jaya being different, and adds a different element. I talked about keeping viewers engaged, keeping the storyline, people investing in her storyline, her outcome, because she is an important part of the story. So I found that pretty interesting. And they do quickly mention that American Samoa culture can be a little bit more conservative, but at the same time, this is part of it as well, the Fani. And I apologize if I mispronounce that, trying my best with it. Now, let me put in another piece here about the movie in general. I found that the storytelling of it was different in some areas. The way that it ends and the way that they tell a story of a soccer match, a football match, however, depending upon where you're listening in the world, I found it fascinating. It was different. How do you put a spin on something that people know? People know what a soccer match looks like. How do you put a spin on it? And this movie does have an element of that. And I think that those are pieces of a good director, and why people do like Taika. Has Taika had a couple misses? People might say Thor: Love and Thunder was a miss. Is it enjoyable to watch? Yes, it's full on Taika, in my opinion. It's not cooped up Taika, I'll say, but he does make content that is entertaining, that is different. So that piece of it, again, quality writer, quality director, and a spin on something that makes people want to keep watching till the end. A piece that I'm going to transition to and talk about with this movie, and I'm going to talk about other Marvel stuff just for fun, or just because it's something that comes to mind, is with the representation. So Jaya in this movie is a transgender athlete, and according to IMDb, and I believe it might have said in the movie, that she's the first transgender player to compete on a World Cup stage. Now, this type of representation, it's not done in a manner that is rushed, that's fake. That is one of my big issues with some content these days that comes out. How do you handle serious topics, or topics that some people don't want to hear about, that don't want to talk? I know when talking about Jaya and being a transgender athlete, that some audience members are immediately just going to turn off, that's not for them. They don't like it, whatever reason they want to come up with in their mind. And I know that I'm getting a little aggressive with how I'm saying it, but it does make me mad that that's something that makes people uncomfortable or upset. But this type of representation, I think, is important for people to seek. We don't know what people are going through. We don't know what people, what they're thinking, and showing this in a movie I think that it's important, and the way that it's handled is done in a manner that doesn't take away from it at all. I will say that one of the pieces of content out there that really upset me was season 3 of Ted Lasso, and it does frustrate me that, of course, it's nominated for Emmys because it's something that I'm sure Hollywood does not watch, but they like the people that are in it, and therefore they want to nominated for Emmys. I could say the same thing about the Rings of Power. I couldn't believe when I saw it. I think it says, like, 'cause I have Amazon Prime Video, that I think it says that it's nominated for 6 Emmys. I was blown away. It was one of the worst series that I've seen, but I know they put a lot of money into it, and I'm sure that there's business elements of it that I don't know that aren't talked about and why they could get 6 Emmy nominations. But with Ted Lasso, there is a gay athlete on the team, and they literally just tiptoe around it. Like, they make it want to seem like it's basically a happy ending, and that everybody's going to be fine with it, and that the way that they talk about it at certain points, it's just like, why are you just tiptoeing around this? Why don't you address it in a manner that's realistic and that showcases what this person is going through? And so I think that representation is very important. I talked about it in previous podcasts, and this is not saying apples to apples, but when I saw Shang-Chi in theaters, I'm not of Chinese descent. I'm half Filipino. And I told my wife when we were walking out that was the first time that I felt like a character was like me, that was Asian, and that was a superhero, that was doing amazing things. And that type of mindset, I will say that I never really understood it until that moment. And I was a grown adult, and I really started to think more about it, how important that is, that young individuals, no matter what their belief is, where they are, what their race is, religion, whatever that might be, that they feel like, oh, wow, I can do special things. I think that is one of the beauties of movies in general, is that people can watch them and believe that they can achieve, because I think you even talked about pieces earlier that sometimes they get caught up in the negative aspects, that life is hard. I can agree with that. But they get caught up with, you can't do this, you can't do X, Y, Z. And when they should believe that they can. And they just sometimes need a little bit of help in understanding that there is a light at the end of the road. Let me get back to this representation piece. So I did a little preparation with reading about this movie, more than I do with other ones, because I wanted to make sure that I spoke as correctly as I could with putting together an outline for this. So in the prep for this episode, I read an article from a publication that was really attempting to shame the movie for telling the story from the basis of Fassbender's character. And the way that they labeled it is that his character was learning to tolerate trans people. And when I read that, I honestly just felt like it was just a way to get clickbait. And I will say that shame on IMDb for making this one of like the related articles. I think it was the first one on IMDb that you could click. And at no point did I feel like that was one of the storylines or the Fassbender's characters, his motivation, that he was able to tolerate. I could say probably 5 things right now that would just completely show how wrong that is. And I don't, because I want people to watch the movie. I want people to see it. But to me, that's what some people do out there. Like, I started the podcast talking about why I had to add a preface for these instant reaction episodes. Just like the same thing with this article out there, that it's just trying to take that negative lens for movies these days to get clicks, to get attention, when you could easily tweet about positive things. You could easily write about positive things. And when I think about it, and I'm just thinking out loud here, that's really what these types of episodes are. They're positive podcast episodes in order to promote going to the theater, watching movies, spending money at theaters, all things in that manner. So when even talking about this relationship between Thomas, who's Fassbender's character, and Jaya, I can say that tiptoeing around it here, but they do have a little spat early in the movie, but they actually have a very strong relationship, in my opinion, that develops, and she becomes a very crucial element of this story. And I pulled a quote here from Taika, so I'm going to read it for you. Well, I create a version of Coach Rongen that satisfies the storyline for the film. So I made him a little bit more ignorant in the film and a bit more belligerent. He had gone through a bit more loss when he gets to the island, which is something you needed somewhere for the character to go to. Thomas in real life is a sweetheart. He's a larger than life character. There's a lot of similarities between him and Fassbender's character. Make no mistake, I've taken a lot of liberties with retelling the story, but the authentic parts are the heart and soul of the story. Very specific details that are true. A lot of elements are true, but it's more about making it entertaining that's unique and authentic to my style. I included this because it's over the top in some pieces, and the pieces that come to my mind don't have nothing to do with Jaya's character. And I think, again, you can always take the positive way when describing a movie, or you can go down the negative route for clicks. That's just my outlook on that. Now, 2 more pieces here to talk about before I sign it off. I'm going to talk about ranking it with other sports movies. This is a sports movie. Talks about soccer. Yes, that's a piece of it, and there's some happy pieces of it. My wife saw it. She loved it. She is not a sports fan. I don't even know if the movies I'm going to talk about, if she's seen these ones. So it's not on the level of, say, Rudy or Hoosiers or even Rocky, in my opinion. I mean, those are at the top of the pyramid, in my opinion. But it's actually watchable and entertaining. I'll say, unlike maybe like Kicking and Screaming. And if you know anything about me, you know I don't like Will Ferrell and his movies. And that has to go more with sports than anything. But it's a very watchable movie. It's a good message for learning about cultures, accepting individuals, and not trying to beat a square peg into a circle, something along those lines, because that is really a fun storyline. Fassbender's character and him learning about American Samoa and their outlook on life and how that plays into this soccer match that they're building up to at the end of the day. Let me read you a couple trivia, just a couple short ones here before. The film was shot in November and December of 2019, would have marked Armie Hammer's final role before numerous rape and abuse allegations were made against him, after which Hammer was dropped by his acting agency and publicist. The movie required reshoots. I don't know what I was saying there, for which Hammer was not available. He stepped down from the spotlight and Will Arnett replaced him. I didn't know about that going into the movie. Will Arnett's character, I could see definitely Armie Hammer playing that role, but I don't want to see Armie Hammer. And honestly, anything I don't get why these days we get documentaries about bad people these days that you go on any platform, streaming platform, and you can find, I'm sure, something about Armie Hammer. The last one here, certain soccer stunts for Jaya were performed by the real-life Jaya Salua herself. So pretty fascinating there. I can think of a couple scenes in my mind, so to think that she stepped in and performed those, pretty cool. Like I mentioned, and with these episodes, I don't really have to do a recommendation at the end to wrap things up. I make them to promote going to the theater, seeing movies that hopefully get this industry on the right track or keep the ball rolling and growing. These days we talk about everything, superhero fatigue, movie fatigue, whatever that is. I think that really there's a piece of it with streaming. That's really my outlook on that, but that's not what this podcast is about. It's about, hopefully you want to go see this, take the time out of your week. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the holidays in general are all too busy movie days. So maybe this is something you want to throw in there. I don't know if it's going to be still available near the end of December, but if you have some time, definitely check it out and hopefully you enjoy it. This has been another instant reaction episode in the MovieBuffs podcast. My name is Tyler and I hope to catch you in the next one.